This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for your company. Well, if there's ever any doubt about the energy that Donald Trump can bring to a room, just look at the reception the 47th president received over the weekend at the UFC in Miami.
The entrance right now to a standing ovation, the 47th president of the United States of America, flanked by UFC CEO Dana White and others, Donald J. Trump.
The crowd absolutely roaring there. It's that same feeling that we felt on November 5, that America is back. But the leftist media, they don't want to show you that. They're continuing to push this anti-Trump and anti-Elon narrative. But the president is not backing away from his fight against the mainstream media that he likes to call fake news. This is how he introduced his granddaughter Kai to reporters on Air Force One.
You know the fake news? This is the fake news.
Hey, what's up, everyone? How are you guys? Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning. We're just doing a little news conference. You want to partake?
I'll assume so.
She's a great athlete, actually, great golfer.
Yeah.
And great student, actually. So go ahead.
Donald Trump having a bit of fun there, but he's also taking his fight against the mainstream media seriously. And there were explosive scenes at the White House today. During a press briefing with El Salvador's president, Donald Trump brutally shut down CNN for appearing to push to have a deported MS-13 gang member return to the United States. This is Caitlin Collins' question on the deportation of an El Salvadoran national, Kilmar Albrego Garcia.
And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility.
And the media has been labelling this MS-13 gang member a Maryland dad. Now, Pam Bondi has reminded CNN of the facts.
First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So what did the president of El Salvador have to say on this? That he has no intention of returning him to the US.
We're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so they can go back to being the murder capital of the world? And that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
I mean, there's...
Joining us now is CEO of Publius PR and author of the White Privileged album, bringing racial harmony to very fine people on both sides, AJ Rice. AJ, thank you so much for joining us. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele met with President Donald Trump in the Oval Office today to discuss how the two countries could coordinate on reducing violent crime in the US. And President Bukele confirmed that he has no intention of sending deported MS-13 gang member Kilmar Albrego Garcia back to America.
Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
It's a good point. The US can't free criminals and think that crime is just going to go down magically. What did you make of the exchange between the president and the left-wing media?
Well, it's amazing. Great to be here, Gab. It's an amazing thing when you're looking at the media and you're listening to them and you listen to some of Hollywood, some of academia here in the United States. They want all criminals whether they've come here the first time and deported, second time and been deported. They want them all brought back. They see future voters, some might say current voters. And I mean, I think Bucali handled himself, fantastic. The left is not quite sure here in the United States what to do with some of these populist Latin leaders, like in Argentina and El Salvador. They're used to the types of leaders like the Castro boys, right? Like Hugo Chavez, like Daniel Ortega, right? Like Evo Morales, these left-wing Marxists that remind them of their romantic days when they were in journalism school.
It's interesting. The left-wing media are right now freaking out because comedian Bill Maher has opened up about his White House dinner with President Donald Trump, and it wasn't all that bad. During a segment on Real Time with Bill Maher, he described the president as gracious and measured. Take a listen.
He's much more self-aware than he lets on in public. Look, I get it. It doesn't matter who he is at a private dinner with a comedian. It matters who he is on the world stage. I'm just taking as a positive that this person exists, because everything I've ever not liked about him was, I swear to God, absent, at least on this night with this guy.
Now, the left have just gone into meltdown over these comments. A former MSNBC host has lashed out saying that this is just so Bill Maher can keep his own show. And he said that Bill Maher was prostituting himself to Donald Trump. I mean, I want to get your thoughts firstly on what Bill Maher had to say. He's obviously been a pretty harsh critic of Donald Trump in the past, but also how the left-wing media has just been in meltdown over it.
Well, sure. So Keith Olbermann there, for your audience, he's a washed-up hack from both ESPN and MSNBC, which is the far-left network here in the United States. Here's the thing. The Democrats don't want any of their people, be it an actor, be it a politician, or even a traditional comedian or late-night host, to escape the intellectual plantation. They cannot allow it. In this last election, in this last election cycle, some of their biggest names, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, escaped. So they have to crack the whip on people like John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, Bill Maher, who you just played, Stephen A. Smith, who's one of the most famous African-American sports analysts here in the United States. They cannot allow this independent, sometimes moderate, sometimes left of center, sometimes right of center thinking to continue. So they're going to get hammered. They're going to get hammered if they try doing this.
Yeah, absolutely right. While we're talking about the media is right now fawning over this all-female flight to space on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket. There was pop star Katy Perry. She was joined by Gayle King and Jeff Bezos' fiancée, Lauren Sanchez. And the flight went off from Texas and it lasted about 10 minutes before it, of course, returned to Earth. And this is what Katy Perry had to say.
Katie! Woo!
I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you, like how much love you have to give.
AJ kissing the ground after 10 minutes up in space. I mean, what do you make of this?
What does Australia think of the first episode of Feminists in Space? Well, I mean, Gab, why weren't you on this? You would look good in one of those blue jumpsuits.
Thank you.
Get rid of the red dress. You get the blue jumpsuit. Feminists in Space. I can see it. It's going to be on Amazon Prime. I mean, look, what I find sort of appalling is that the media was pretending like Christopher Columbus had been reincarnated as a bunch of left-wing females. God bless Lauren Sanchez. She was at the inauguration here. She looked great. She had everybody. She was a showstopper. And, it's Bezos' fiance. So, put her on the flight. Fine. But what I find crazy is that the media, although they covered this breathlessly today here in the United States, they couldn't find any time to thank Elon Musk for actually going into space, docking, rescuing astronauts that Biden had left behind, and bringing them back safely to Earth.
No, of course not. That's just not part of the narrative. But look, we were speaking about the Democrats before. It's wild how desperate they are getting at the moment. Bernie Sanders has taken it upon himself to rant about Donald Trump. Well, that's not new, but in front of a bunch of party goers at Coachella. This is, of course, part of the Democrats' 2028 playbook, is to just put some crazy TDS into some people who are likely out of their mind partying at Coachella. But this is Bernie Sanders.
We need you to stand up to fight for justice. To fight for economic justice, social justice, and racial justice. Now, we got a president of the United States who... I agree. He thinks that climate change is a hoax. He is dangerously wrong.
I mean, is this what's going to turn it around for the Democrats, speaking to partygoers at Coachella?
Well, look, he's the 83-year-old leader of the youth movement. Can't you tell? He's only that was Larry David, by the way. No, it wasn't. I mean, he's only slightly more spry than Joe Biden was. I mean, the synapses are firing a little bit better. But even poor Bernie versus when he was running against Hillary, what was that, 50 years ago now, when he was only 112, he has lost a little bit of speed off of that brain power. You can sort of tell he's up there with his cue cards. And he's talking to a group of people that, he couldn't get to vote for him in a primary twice, and they certainly didn't show up for Kamala Harris. So I don't know who's in that audience. Most people there probably just wanted to hear some great music, and instead they got an old Marxist ranting at them.
Yeah, I don't think they forked out all that money and turned up at Coachella hoping to hear Bernie Sanders. But unfortunately for them, that's what they got. You mentioned Stephen A. Smith before. He says that he's considering a run for president in 2028, speaking on the ABC's This Week. He criticised the Democrats for focusing on woke culture and cancel culture during the 2024 campaign.
So are you really thinking about running for president? Is this something you think?
Listen, I have no choice because I've had elected officials, and I'm not going to give their names, elected officials coming up to me. I've had folks who are pundits come up to me. I've had folks that got a lot of money, billionaires and others, that have talked to me about exploratory committees and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. I've never had a desire to be a politician. I just signed a contract extension with ESPN. I am very, very happy. Good one. I would hope somebody else would step up that's more qualified than me. But if it has to come down to me, it is something I would consider. Yes, I would, because I don't mind the thought of tussling with these folks at all, on the left or the right. All of them disgust me, to be quite honest with you.
AJ, what are your thoughts on this one? He's certainly right about the Democratic Party just not having a leader or a vision at the moment.
Well, unlike other parts of the Commonwealth, the former Commonwealth states, in the United States, we really only have two parties. And isn't it amazing? It's just an amazing thing that the Democrat Party, the party of Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, the party of Franklin Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy, has fallen into such ill repute that one of their most sane, popular voices that could possibly run for president, and God love, look, I write about Stephen A. Smith in this book. He is a voice of sanity, not just on sports, but on life. So if you got guys like him and Bill Maher and Senator Fetterman, who needs like a speaking spell in order to do a debate with Dr. Oz, God bless them, that this is the best they have, they're in deep trouble.
Absolutely.
They're in deep, deep trouble.
They certainly are. Look, I want to get your thoughts on DOGE. We just keep learning more and more about the waste and abuse and fraud. And last week, DOGE revealed or claimed that millions of dollars in unemployment claims have gone to fake people who aren't even born yet. They brought out the receipts, as they always do, and there was one case where a person whose birthday was listed in the year 2154 received $40,000. I mean, we keep learning about these insane DOGE findings, and it's still so shocking.
Sure. I mean, look, here's the thing, and a lot of sort of conservative analysts here in the United States don't say what I'm about to say, is that, first of all, this is a grift. Yes, this is a money laundering operation that the left was using through big government to funnel to their nonprofits to then donate back to politicians. But the Democrat Party wasn't the only party in power for the last 40 years, and certainly not the only party in power on Capitol Hill. Plenty of Republicans elected for decades have been sitting up there on Capitol Hill collecting their belly button lint while this gigantic money laundering operation was going on, and they really didn't care. There's been a few people over the years, like names that you wouldn't know, like Tom Coburn and obviously Ron Paul and others. But the fact that they've all sort of looked the other way tells me that they're all complicit in this.
Look, finally, I want to ask you about Easter that is approaching. The White House is gearing up for an extraordinary celebration for Holy Week ahead of Easter, and Donald Trump will be participating in several events to celebrate and honour the holiday with the observance that it deserves. But remember that this comes after the Biden White House declared Easter last year Transgender Day of Visibility. I mean, it's so important that we are reminded about what our life was like 1 year ago and how different it is now that we have Trump back in the White House.
Yes, that's right. It was they wouldn't celebrate cisgender Jesus in the Biden White House. Now, here's the thing. Trump has gotten more religious since the assassination attempts. When he was running in 2015, people would ask me, can we, and they said this about Reagan too, because Reagan was married twice and Trump's been married 3 times. That he's not, that he has a certain style. He's from Queens. Why do evangelicals and other Catholics and Orthodox Jewish voters like him? And the reality is this: he is the bodyguard, at least at this point, Netanyahu might be as well, of Western civilization. So Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian civilization, which includes Australia. And look, not all civilizations are created equal. I know that's not always politically correct, but, Western civilization is something that we should hold on to. So that's, I think, and look, Melania's Catholic. I think that they have, understood their mortality since the assassination attempts. And I think that's why you're getting a sea change here, because Trump, whether he's fighting DEI or whether he's pushing back against Iran, or Hamas, he is in the fight for Western civilization.
Yes.
And I think that's a great thing. Yes.
Absolutely. AJ Rice, CEO of Publius PR and author of the White Privilege album, bringing racial harmony to very fine people on both sides. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Joining us now is social commentator and Australia's top psychic medium, David Stevens, also known as David the Medium. David, welcome back to Power Hour. It is so good to see you. At the start of the year, you released a word to really sum up the energy of 2025, and that word was revolution. Looking at what's unfolding now, what's happening over in America with trade, it certainly feels like there's radical change happening. Are we in the thick of it right now, or is there more chaos to come?
Well, Gabriella, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you. But yeah, I think when we're looking at international trade at the moment, I mean, it's a classic revolution sort of unfolding worldwide at the moment. Are we in the thick of it right now? I mean, it's a really interesting structure that's really been upended and unfolded. But I think it's going to be something that will continue for the rest of the year, absolutely. There's a lot of unpredictability around that. But I think it'll be very interesting to see America really come into the fold and really see sort of what countries are going to be renegotiating their trade deals. And there is going to definitely be longer term benefits to this as well. So it's interesting.
Well, Trump has vowed that nobody is getting off the hook for unfair trade and tariffs. What's your assessment of how the president is handling the trade war and his strategy?
I mean, it's so fascinating. I mean, this is classic Trump. We have seen him talk about tariffs and trade really for the last 40 years. So it really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone how he's handling the situation. It really is a classical mix of economic America first nationalism mixed with some deal-making bravado, which Trump is a classic and known for. So personally, I think he's doing incredibly well. If you're looking at it from an America First perspective, he's really got the aim of upending some really unfair, unreciprocal trade deals within the United States. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how he goes with some major allies moving forward when we're dealing with countries like not only Australia, but also India and Japan. So I think it's going to be a longer-term benefit for the United States. There might be a few sort of short-term upheaval energies going on there, especially with the cost of living, but the longer term is beneficial. I mean, it's really, the whole aim is bringing not only manufacturing back to the United States, which he's already proven to be successful with, but it's going to be incredibly beneficial for America's longer-term economic security as well.
It's interesting you say that, because that's something that seems to be pretty left out of the conversation when you're looking at the mainstream media's coverage of this. There's been so much fear, a lot of hysteria around what Donald Trump has been doing, and I just love looking at your takes of when you do updates of what Donald Trump is doing on your social media platforms, because it puts a little bit of perspective back in the conversation. But what do you make of the media's coverage of this trade war and also Trump's first 3 months in office?
Oh my gosh. I mean, where do we really begin? The Australian media landscape and also elements of the American landscape is so dominated by hyperbole and hysteria. And it's been this case not only over the last few months with Donald Trump, but really for the last 5 years with everything that's gone on worldwide. There's a real disconnect with providing factual, on the ground information about what's actually occurring. And it's just this real sort of negative agenda. The Trump derangement syndrome and the Trump panic seems to precede any sort of common sense. And it's a wonder that why people are scared and panicking, because there's been no real involvement from any of these media commentariats to actually give a balance and perspective argument into the mainstream. So it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to change, does it? But let's look at the Democrats. They continue to dive in terms of popularity. Their attack lines are all over the place. And we just witnessed Bernie Sanders ranting about Donald Trump on stage at Coachella. So that's an insight into where they're heading and where their strategy is at. But what do you see for the Democrats and why are they struggling so much, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, where is the Democrat Party really getting their support from? It's not from the fringe lunatics, to be very fair. I mean, when we look at the Democrat support within the United States, a lot of it is coming from the older generation at the moment that I personally believe still have the opinion that this is the Democrat Party from the 1980s and the 1990s, because that's what the mainstream media and the propagandists tell them to think. But who are the Democrat Party if they're not inciting a race war, a gender war, a class war, or a geopolitical war? Like, what do they actually stand for? Mainstream America understands that maybe they don't have their backs anymore. The working class of America is certainly swinging towards the Republican Party and their policies. And you can't really beat someone who's an economic populist and also a common sense populist like Donald Trump. I mean, where are the leaderships within the Democrat Party right now? I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see over the next few years, not only who starts getting a louder voice in the United States, but also who's going to be their candidate for 2028 at the moment, because there's no suitable or viable candidates right now, that's for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a great question. No one at all. In terms of revolution that we spoke about at the start of this interview, the MAHA movement's also underway in the US. RFK Jr. says that by September, they'll be able to announce the causes of autism. That's caused a lot of hysteria by mainstream media outlets when they cover RFK Jr. But what's your sense of where the MAHA movement's at, where it's going? Will RFK Jr., I suppose, be able to achieve what he says he will?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally very excited by the MAHA movement. I'm very interested in not only what RFK has said over the last few years, but especially where he's projecting to take healthcare industry within the United States. I mean, no one can deny that there's some serious health issues, not only within the Western world, but especially within the United States directly. I mean, there's a massive increase in chronic illness. There's an obesity epidemic. There's a mental health epidemic. And America's spending more per capita on healthcare than any other country in the world, and not getting results from that. So I think in terms of the MAHA movement, and especially when we look at RFK with autism, 4 to 5 months is going to be a very interesting timeline to see what he can come up with. But it really is getting the conversation started, because there, clearly needs to be a revolution, not only in how we think about healthcare, but in terms of what is impacting everyone day by day. I mean, I think there will be a very interesting journey there to really sort of address some underlying issues, maybe within the environment, and especially within the food and the chemicals and additives that are included in, the mainstream sort of food, and also fluoride within water. Like, there's a lot of issues that I think the MAHA movement's going to address. Using autism as a very dominant strategy at the moment, I mean, it's a very important issue, especially for those parents that unfortunately have to deal with this directly, but it's going to get the conversation started. And I think that's incredibly important, because it just simply hasn't happened for decades, if ever, really.
Absolutely. David, your live events are returning for 2025. You'll be back travelling around Australia, and I'm so excited. Can you just remind us how we can follow you to make sure that we don't miss out on tickets?
Well, first of all, Gabriella, I hope to see you there in Sydney. But for anyone interested in coming to my live tour, I'll be touring every capital city in Australia, including Darwin and the Gold Coast. And tickets are going to come on sale in September 1, and the tour is going to be happening in October and November. But you can definitely follow along on my social media and on my website, David the Medium, where I'm going to be posting all updated information in due course.
I will absolutely be there. Wouldn't miss it for the world. David Stevens, also known as David the Medium, thank you so much for coming back on Power Hour. Joining us now is Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal Party president and Sky News contributor. Michael, thank you for joining us on Power Hour. The federal election is approaching fast, and polling's not looking good for the coalition. The latest news poll in The Australian showed support for the coalition fell to 35%. But polling expert Kos Samara says that it's not going to take much for opposition leader Peter Dutton to win back young voters. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not sure at this point in the race. I feel like it would actually take a lot. What's your assessment?
Well, Gabriella, there's no doubt that Albanese's had the best of the first part of the campaign, but the signature housing policy released by Michael Sukkar and Peter Dutton is hopefully a game changer amongst young people. Albo's policy of building 100,000 houses is just not believable. Home ownership is incredibly important. It's a very strong Liberal Party brand equity dating back to the 1940s. Labor have never been big on home ownership. Notoriously, they described homeowners as little capitalists many years ago in the 40s, and it's never been an issue much for Labor. And to think that the Labor government could get 100,000 houses built for first home buyers is just preposterous. They haven't built one under the Housing Australia Future Fund. So that could be a really important policy for young people. Because home ownership is something that people should aspire to. It's out of reach for people. And I think what Michael Sukkar's announced is, going to win a lot of votes for the coalition.
Okay, look, I want to speak to you about Iran. Donald Trump has reiterated that Iran must abandon any hope of obtaining a nuclear weapon as the US prepares for more talks. Trump says that Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. Classic Trump rhetoric there. But what can we really expect from talks between Iran and the United States?
Well, look, Iran's in a much weakened position now. As we know, their allies have been smashed in Gaza and in Lebanon and in Yemen. They've lost all their supply chain route through Syria to Lebanon. Their economy is incredibly weak. There is growing internal opposition. Their air defences were smashed by the Israelis. They've got the Turkish government that strongly opposes them because the Turkish government are now very supportive of the new regime in Syria, et cetera, et cetera. So Iran's in a much weakened position economically, politically and militarily. And so I would expect in due course there will be some kind of deal done, brokered by the Americans, because Iran's just not in a position to build a nuclear bomb and then have them all smashed. If they don't agree to something, then you'd expect the Israelis will destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities, And that may well be a death knell to the Iranian government. So they're going to have to do something. They're not in a position. They're not in a strong position. They don't hold any cards. They don't hold many cards these days, as Trump might famously say. So I expect something to happen in the next few months where Iran agrees not to develop a nuclear weapons gap.
Okay, and let's talk about Hamas. Hamas has now rejected an Israeli ceasefire proposal brokered by Egypt, according to Al Jazeera, and the plan included a 45-day pause and the release of all the hostages, as we cannot forget there are more than 50 still being held by Hamas terrorists. But you say Iran doesn't hold the cards. What about Hamas? What options are there for Hamas?
Well, their cards are getting weaker by the day as well. We just saw the French president meeting the Palestinian Authority leader, Mahmoud Abbas. They're talking about some kind of transition where the Palestinian Authority becomes the government in Gaza. Hamas's weapons supply has been stopped because of the Iranians, for the reasons I explained. Their leaders have been killed. Bit by bit, the Hamas position gets weaker by the day. And so, however, the Israelis said, well, you have to disarm as a part of the peace process. Well, they won't do that. They'll fight to the death. But unfortunately, Hamas, it looks like death is coming because they'd have no international support now without the Iranians helping them. So day by day, the Hamas position is weaker, and that makes the position stronger of the Israelis and of Hamas's opposition amongst the Arab states, which is almost universal now.
Finally, Michael, Ukraine, Donald Trump has blamed Zelensky for allowing the war to happen. Let's take a listen.
But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. He's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles.
Michael, what's your assessment of where this is really at? It doesn't appear that it's going the way that Trump wanted.
No, well, that's complete nonsense. I mean, he shouldn't keep saying Zelensky started the war. I mean, patently, obviously, he didn't. So he seems to have this shocking blind spot in relation to Zelensky. The fact of the matter is that the Russians started the war. Everybody knows that. Trump is trying not to criticise the Russians publicly because he needs the Russians to come to the table and agree with a peace deal. We understand that, but it's not going as well as he thought it would go. The Russians might just wait him out. So he said he'd resolve it in one day. That was never going to be possible. That was more a statement of of hope rather than something he thought he'd achieve.
Of course.
But are those peace deals? Is the peace deal going well? No, not going well. And the Russians are being very intransigent. Nothing seems to be imminent in relation to that. So Trump needs to increase threats against Russia if they don't come to the table, not increase threats against Zelensky because he didn't start the war. And he'd be the first person who would want to stop it, but he wants to do it on reasonable grounds, and that's why, Trump needs to pressure the Russians more, and that's the reason it's not stopped because the Russians are holding firm. Gabriella.
Michael Kroger, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Joining us now is Amanda Rowe, CEO of Small Business Women Australia. Amanda, great to see you.
Likewise.
Let's talk about this election that is happening here in Australia. And my goodness, people are so bored watching these two leaders. I mean, there's this opinion piece by Greg Sheridan in The Australian. This is the worst election campaign I've ever seen, according to him. But he's not the only one. That seems to be the conversation. I mean, what's your analysis looking at Peter Dutton, at Anthony Albanese? What are they doing and what aren't they doing? Because they're really struggling, I think, to make an impact.
So I think Albanese is doing his best to avoid talking about the last 3 years, right? So he can't get up and say, re-elect me because the last 3 years were the best 3 years you had, the economy's strong. If you're going to look at the last 3 years, the economy is pretty much going to a nosedive and it's only going to get worse. So he doesn't talk about that. He's talking about the future and we will do this and like a bad relationship. I'm just going to keep promising things and you're going to just keep staying in. And Dutton, I don't think he's coming out hard enough on key things. I think he's kind of being in the middle, but I can see in him that he wants to. And I really hope that he comes out very hard. We don't need a friend as our leader. We need a leader, like your dad. We don't need you to be my friend. I need you to do the best for me, whether I like it or not. And that's really a message for the young people too.
Yes.
Don't go to the person that's saying what you like to hear, because that's usually a path that leads to destruction. Go to the person that cares about you the most.
Has Peter Dutton left it too late? I know, it's not the election tomorrow. There is still time, but he's cutting it very fine.
He is, but I think come out hard, be definitive on the key things that he knows that people care about, like the housing and young people. And so, for example, they say you can use super to buy housing. Labor will come out going, they're trying to ruin your retirement. No, they're actually not. They're actually trying to get you financially secure now, and he needs to come out hard on that. And I think he needs to utilise his pre-selected candidates and his MPs more, because they should be out there fighting this battle and not leaving it up to him.
Let's look at the US. Donald Trump is fighting against the mainstream media, which is nothing new, but he's come out pretty strong just in the last couple of days. The president has announced that he's suing CBS, 60 Minutes and Paramount for billions of dollars for their coverage of the 2024 election campaign, where, of course, we saw clips of Kamala Harris edited to make her appear better than she actually was. So Donald Trump posted, "I am honoured to be suing 60 Minutes, CBS, Fake News and Paramount over their fraudulent, beyond recognition reporting. They did everything possible to illegally elect Kamala, including completely and corruptly changing major answers to live interview questions, but it just didn't work for them." Look, what do you make of Donald Trump? He's obviously uses strong language. That's his style. But I think, to his credit, he probably shouldn't be letting this go.
So my rule of thumb is, if you're going to do that with one, you've got to do it with others. So you can't just target one particular mainstream media outlet that has done that. He then now needs to make sure that any other outlet, whether it's an independent outlet, mainstream, anyone else, if they're doing the same, he needs to call it out. So if he finds someone has edited things to make him look good, he needs to call that out too, because that's what a leader does. They call out everyone that does the same thing.
No, that's absolutely a fair point. But looking at some of the media coverage that we've seen in recent days, this is pretty shocking. Taylor Lorenz is rightfully being slammed for appearing to praise this accused United Healthcare CEO assassin, Luigi Mangione. And we know we saw some pretty wild scenes from many on the far left who believe that Luigi Mangione is some kind of hero, who's of course an accused murderer. But this is what went to air on CNN.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer, when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals. You're going to see women especially that feel like, oh my God, right? Like, here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems like this morally good man, which is hard to find.
I mean, there they are just laughing about this morally good man, honestly, and no real pushback from CNN.
So I think there's a couple of factors here. I think America, or you say Hollywood, they do glorify criminals.
Yes,
so if you look at there's mini-series all the time and people are watching it, and not more of an investigation type show, but actual glorifying people, which I think is quite disturbing. And also that we're in a society now where we think killing is on a scale, right? So if we kill this group, it's okay, or this person is okay, but if we kill this group, oh, they deserved it, or this group was asking for it. So we've got this mixed understanding of, oh, murder's okay if, and it should be, how about it's just blanketly wrong. You do not kill. End of story. And I think we need to go back to basics, basic morality. You just don't kill people, regardless of whether you want to justify it, or society, or government, or corporates. Wrong is wrong.
Yeah, and there's data to back that up. On the show last week, we spoke about a report that actually found that there's an increasing trend of people who support killing someone like Donald Trump or Elon Musk, Elon Musk is part of this greater cause. It's just disgusting. And
it's very concerning.
Laugh about comments like
so
that.
That's what he should be suing. The glorification, Trump should, the glorification of any form of murder, right?
Absolutely.
Or any form of killing.
Of course. I know. I can't believe I have to speak about it, but
I know, right?
Common sense. Let's talk about the royals. Meghan Markle has reportedly sent her father-in-law, King Charles, a gift box from her new lifestyle brand As Ever, and this is apparently a gesture to rebuild royal bridges. I mean, what do you make of this strategy? Is that something that King Charles really wants?
I'm not sure a box of goods to the King will work. Maybe an Aston Martin or a car or something like that will get his attention. The reality is, I always believe in giving gifts to people and apologising and being genuine. But I think what she needs to do is actually repent of being defiant and pulling away from the royal family, because you can pull away from the royal family, you have every right to, but then trying to leverage off it at the same time. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So pick what you want. Do you want to be part of the royal family, or do you want to be a civilian? Don't try and do both, which is what she's doing. And I think that's always going to backfire. Mm-hmm. No one knows who to... Do we support her? Do we like her? Do we not? She's making it worse for herself. So she should just say, I'm really sorry. I want to come back now, because being an influencer is really hard.
Yeah. Well, Prince Harry, I'm not sure if he's much better than Meghan Markle, because he's apparently reportedly working on a follow-up to his memoir, Spare, sparking concerns within the royal family, of course, about what else he could possibly reveal about them. And this is, of course, around his legal bid to regain police protection in the UK, and that if that fails, he'll be speaking about that in his book too. I mean, is that something that you want?
No, I didn't want the first one.
Yeah.
But the thing is, police protection, that comes with what you just left, what you rejected. Again, people want all the spoils but not actually commit to anything, and that's what's happened. But please stop writing books, and if anything, take your profile and use it for good. Go out there and help people. You don't have to promote it, you don't have to put it all over the TV, but just their name as is now would still open doors and help organisations get money, help community groups get attention, and that's what this should be used for.
Absolutely. Amanda Rose, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thanks for that.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.